All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking what is literally India's crowning diplomatic achievement of the decade. We're talking about its G20 presidency and how it stepped up as the absolute champion of the Global South. This is a story of India taking the wheel at the world's premier forum for international economic cooperation.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why does this matter right now? Well, because against all odds, and I mean in the middle of a deeply polarized world currently dealing with the fallout of the Russia-Ukraine war, India actually managed to get everyone to agree on the unanimous New Delhi Declaration. Getting every single player to shake hands in today's geopolitical climate, that is absolutely no small feat.
To really wrap our heads around the scale we're dealing with here, think about this. The G20 nations represent a staggering 85% of global GDP. That's basically the entire world's economy sitting at one table. The economic stakes here are just massive. When the G20 makes a move, trust me, the whole globe feels the ripple effect.
To help us digest this whole complex geopolitical puzzle, here is our roadmap for today. We'll hit 1. The G20 global shift. 2. Bridging the global south. 3. India's strategic impact. 4. Promises versus reality. 5. A multipolar future. And we'll wrap it up with 6. Key takeaways.
Starting with Section 1, the G20 global shift, and that stunning unanimous declaration. So, getting the New Delhi Declaration adopted was monumental all on its own. But perhaps even more historic? India successfully championed getting the African Union formally included in the G20, bringing them straight to the global high table. And honestly, it's wild that they pulled this off while navigating the stormy, intense polarization stemming from the Russia-Ukraine war. They somehow managed to keep everyone focused on economic cooperation. Moving right along to Section 2, bridging the global south and amplifying marginalized voices.
Let's do a quick look back. The G20 formed way back in 1999, and it evolved into a leaders' summit by 2008. But 2023, during India's presidency, marks a very deliberate pivot point. India completely shifted the trajectory to bring the concerns of the developing world out of the shadows and straight onto the main stage.
Because historically, the Global South, we're talking developing nations across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, has often felt pretty sidelined by Western-dominated institutions like the UN and the IMF. So India deliberately pivoted. They created initiatives like the Voice of Global South Summits to amplify those exact voices, effectively acting as the ultimate bridge between the developing world and the developed West.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of what we're talking about. 55. That's the number of individual nations in the African Union that were just given a permanent seat at the table. It is an absolutely massive, historic shift in global representation. Let's jump into Section 3, India's strategic impact. And we're going to look at this specifically from an exam perspective. We can break this down into 3 core strategic steps for India. Step 1, India is officially transitioning from just being a balancing power to a global rulemaker that can actually shape international consensus. Step 2, by acting as the primary voice of the Global South, India is offering developing nations a clear alternative to what critics often call China's debt-trap diplomacy and financial imperialism. And Step 3, exporting digital public goods. Let's zoom in on that last one because it's a game changer. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this concept of digital public goods, or DPGs. We're talking about incredibly successful digital infrastructure models like UPI and Aadhaar. India used the massive spotlight of the G20 to showcase these innovations, basically offering them up as a free blueprint for the developing world to achieve rapid, scalable financial inclusion. On to Section 4, promises versus reality, because grand words need to become tangible results. From a global perspective, the West is finally realizing they can't just dictate terms to developing nations anymore, which is why they're relying so heavily on India to bridge the gap. But here's the reality check. The Global South is still sitting around waiting for the West to actually deliver on all those grand climate finance promises and crucial debt relief. On top of that, the ongoing geopolitical polarization around Russia and Ukraine is a constant threat to derailing this economic cooperation. The talk absolutely needs to walk the walk now.
So the crucial point is Section 5, a multipolar future, where the Global South acts at a massive swing factor.
Just look at this G20 troika. That's the past, current, and future presidencies. We went from Indonesia to India in 2023, and now they are passing the baton to Brazil. Having this consecutive lineup of developing nations ensures that their agenda doesn't just fade into the background, it stays front and center in global geopolitics for years. And the specific advantage for New Delhi in all of this, the accumulation of immense diplomatic capital.
They can now take this newfound influence and leverage it to push for major global reforms, specifically fighting to secure permanent seats in outdated multilateral institutions, like the UN Security Council.
All right, Section 6, Key Takeaways. Get ready, these are your high-retention memory triggers.
If you only lock 2 things into your memory today, make it these. India positioned itself as the voice of the voiceless, and they successfully championed the historic entry of the African Union. Those are your absolute core concepts.
And to wrap it up, here are your essential buzzwords to completely master this topic: the New Delhi Declaration, multipolarity, the Global South, and digital public goods, or DPGs. Keep these at the top of your mind. I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought. How will this undeniable multipolar shift continue to reshape the entire global order in the years to come? It is a fascinating question, and one we are going to be watching very, very closely. Well, that wraps up our explainer on India's G20 presidency. Stay tuned, because next time we're going to be breaking down the complex intricacies of the India-EU Free Trade Agreement. You won't want to miss it. See you then.